Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Good evening from Dubai. Welcome everyone to our webinar from the School of Public Health, College of Medicine. Today's webinar is on Forgive for Good from public health perspective and its impact on mental health. It's a very, very interesting topic for all of us. And before we head into the topic, I just want to give you sort of like a background about us and the team and the public health. The webinar is a part of a global campaign, which is the public health, and we are very proud to be affiliated with the Ask for European Public Health. Now, of course, a lot of people who's part of the College of Medicine and UAE University might know me. Other people may not know me. My name is Nofel Janebi. I'm currently working for the Ministry of Community Development as Wellbeing Advisor. My background is in positive psychology. I've run one of the first research center in the region researching in well-being, happiness and well-being. And I don't want to take much time talking about my accomplishments. I really want to have as much time as possible with our guest today. And before we start the webinar, I just want to give you a reminder that you have the freedom to post your questions in two ways, whether to hit the chat box or to use the Q&A option. I'll make sure to read all of your questions within the time limit that we have. And don't forget to post in your names because you will receive a certificate for attending this webinar. Okay, without any further ado, I would love to introduce Professor Fred. Professor Fred has been really investigating and researching in a topic of forgiveness, and it's linked to emotional well-being. One of his great books that I highly recommend reading, and when you read it really deeply and take your time reading that, Forgive for Good and Forgive for Love. As I mentioned, he is really interested in the topic of improving mental health using the forgiveness concept. And I think I'll let the Professor Fred introduce himself and talk more about the Forgiveness Project. Okay. Dr. Fred, the floor is yours.
Hey, you got quite a nice, impressive resume there. It's nice. No, it's nice to see. It's like this positive psych stuff is spreading and really helping this world, really helping this world. My whole, I mean, I'm so much older, but literally when I started, like people looked at me like I was crazy.
Oh,
For talking about what's right with people and how to help them. And I can't even tell you what a blessing it is to have people like you literally out there, um, like promoting this all over the world. So it was cool for me to see.
thank you, Dr. Fred. May I share a story how I get to know about your work?
Oh, of course.
Okay, so at that time of my life, I had a sort of like a crisis. I have a lot of, arguments with family members and a lot of people that I was not able to forgive.
Of
And
course.
I was signed up in Greater Good Life, UC Berkeley Research Center on Wellbeing. So I
Yeah.
signed up for their monthly newsletter. And then your article came up. And I'm like, who's this actually guy investigating about forgiveness? Who can forgive? A lot of people talk about forgiveness is not for them, it's for you. I'm like, this is nonsense. Let me see if I can get something out of this conversation. And the idea actually is to invite you to come and talk over. But I do remember when we had our first call, probably in 2020, 2022, on Zoom, if you still remember. I remember that day
Yeah.
quite well. And you told me flying over to UAE is a lot of work. And I realized that, okay, let's do something virtual. And since then, we try to, have you over, but then I left Happiness Research Center, and I joined the ministry. So I'm quite really excited that my colleague here at the University of UAE and College of Medicine, represented by Public Health, School of Public Health, have invited you. So yeah.
Wonderful. Well, hello, everyone out there um, listening about forgiveness. I am a longstanding teacher at Stanford University. God, I got my doctorate 30 years ago, and I had a career before then. But what drove me, it continues to be of deep importance to me, is that for too much time and emphasis, the field of psychology is about what's wrong with people. You know, are they depressed? Are they angry? Are they anxious? Are they crazy? You know, do they cheat? Do they lie? It never seemed enough to me as a study that it always seemed to me to be missing something crucial. That is, what's good about people? How do you help them become better? What do you do to ennoble people, to help them get along? I mean, you're getting my theme. But when I was in graduate school, and I have two graduate degrees, I have a master's in psychology from a California State University, and I have a PhD from Stanford, you know, one of the top universities in the world. I was really struck by how they were training people like me to almost become high priests of misery. You know, like that I would be an expert in depression or anxiety, but not necessarily be an expert in how to help people live really happy lives. And that seemed bizarre to me. Like, why do you need like thousands of experts in unhappiness running around? Anyway, it always struck a discordant chord in me. But when I started working on forgiveness, the work I was doing was really out of step with the field. And I'm preparing who's ever out there so that when you hear about my work, you'll understand I'm not talking about anger or grievance or victimization or how miserable you might be because somebody lied to you. I'm talking about the antidote to that. This doesn't disregard all the ways that human beings are unkind to each other. They're myriad. I mean, you can't even catalog all the ways that human beings do nasty things to one another. The question is, and this is why I start by talking about positive psychology, is there's choices as to where we as human beings bring our attention. Is it towards the problem of human beings being selfish and nasty and unkind at times? Or is it towards the solutions? And my deep belief is my field and human beings are way too interested in the problems and not enough interested in the solutions. The solutions, there's lots of solutions, but we don't talk about them enough. The solutions are, say, you forgive people, you tolerate differences, you develop compassion for your own suffering, you choose to be kind. You select generosity. Like there's many names for positive solutions. I just happened to stumble on one of them called forgiveness. It's a solution, one of the solutions to human difficulty that doesn't require us to stay stressed and doesn't require us to stay in the role of helpless victim. That's the basis, the power of a more positive approach. Now, for any of you listening out there who don't know a lot about positive psychology or forgiveness, it doesn't mean you ignore being wounded. Like that's ridiculous. I mean, there are horrors all over the world, and you can't just walk in there to people who have had like their kids killed and say, "Hey, forgive," because that's cruel and it's almost hostile. So the challenge, the difficulty, and the art of this work of any human dealing with suffering is to give people honor for their suffering, to allow them to express it and help them not stay stuck in it so it becomes their identity. That is the deep challenge of what I will be discussing, or what every one of you who is listening to this at some point in your life will have to deal with. No human being gets through this life without being mistreated. None. I mean, it's not on the human agenda. Some of us get mistreated because of our identity. Some of us are mistreated because of our gender, our race, our religion, the family we grew up in, our social class. Some of us are mistreated because of personal qualities. Somebody might not like the color of our hair or the neighborhood we grew up in or personal qualities. Others of us may be mistreated by people we've trusted and loved, like our parents or our neighbors, or, the mistreatment will come somewhere. You're very lucky as a human being if you don't get a lot of it and you only get a little of it. So, one of the things that we recognize, and this is almost 30 years ago, give or take, as we were developing the Forgiveness Project, is we were seeing all these people with terrible treatment. I mean, I've done research in Northern Ireland with Catholics and Protestants who killed each other's children, and I've done research in Colombia with after a civil war, and we met with people after the attacks here on the World Trade Center in 9/11, and um, just I don't mean everywhere, but just and that's the big stuff. I mean, on a regular basis, we talk to people whose partners have cheated on each other, whose parents beat them, whose, their brother was an alcoholic and used all their money up. All I'm saying is there's a lot of raw material. But the first thing we realized about teaching forgiveness is, besides what I just said to you, that you can't push into forgiveness right away. Like, people have to know, everyone has to know, even like your best friend who tells you that somebody lied to them, the first thing they have to know is they've been heard, that somebody cares, and that the world is not indifferent to their suffering. Everybody's got to be heard in some way, somehow, that their suffering matters. They also have to process through the suffering as what I don't know the psychology that many of you receive, but in the West, it's about grief. When you are hurt, the first step is to grieve. Part of grieving, maybe on the little bit to the side of it, is um, you have to be heard. But the bigger part of grieving is you have to feel. You have to feel confused, angry, scared, alone, uncertain, because that's how our brains act when they're thrown about. You know, if you're walking down the street and a car hits you, all of a sudden life is completely different. If your partner, your lover, your marriage partner cheats on you, all of a sudden life is completely different. Those emotional experiences are your brain and nervous system being all chaotic because it's had the rug pulled out from under it. And those emotional, intellectual processes of grief are how our nervous system and our being start realigning itself to deal with the changed reality. You can't rush past that. Like, there's going to be a period where you are just messed up. Now, if your car doesn't work and you can't get to an appointment, you may be messed up for an hour. It's not that big a deal, but your mind's going to be messed up. If you lose your job, you may be messed up for a month. If your best friend abandons you, you may be messed up for 3 months. If your partner walks out on you, you may be messed up for 6 months. It's dependent on the severity of the experience and the mental health of the person who gets the mess up. But it turns out that grief, when it goes on too long, becomes not healthy. Like, that becomes what's called complicated grief, where it's no longer helpful. If you understand what I'm saying, no longer helpful to you. And that's when forgiveness needs to start seeping its way in. That there's a period where it is unbelievably helpful to be upset. Not necessarily, violently angry, but upset. Because your world has been rocked and things have been changed. When that no longer is useful, then it becomes a problem. See, for a while, grief is necessary. After too long, grief becomes an obstacle to your well-being. And it's at that point that forgiveness or acceptance become necessary. And this is the important thing to remember about this whole drama. Life will be difficult. Life will present pain. Life will hurt people. There's a process to it. Part of it is the need to be heard and the need to process that pain and hurt. That process will occur for a while until it becomes an obstacle. Like if you're angry that your brother lied to you for a couple of months, that's great. It's like helping you sort out what's true. 2 years after, it now is an impediment for you moving on and making peace with your brother. So the work of forgiveness is a transition from useful grieving to letting it go. Letting it go. And that's the crucial aspect of forgiveness. You let go of your identification or my identification as a wounded person. And we start putting that woundedness in the past tense. So instead of and my wife cheated on me, it's, yeah, my wife cheated on me and I've moved on. And I understand some of the things that went wrong in our marriage. And I realize that, not all marriages work out. But the process of going from, I hate her, she ripped off my life, she's a terrible person, to, it happened, I hated it, and I'm moving ahead. That transitional process is called forgiveness. I'm no longer stuck in my thinking that the past has to control the present and that I'm a victim of what happened. I'm now an agent or a person moving my life ahead. And that transition, that change from what we call victim to hero. I hope you understand now what I'm saying. Victim to hero is, in its essence, a change in how we talk and how we tell our story. And this is why we've been able to do this all over the world, because what I just told you is a real simplification of a very challenging process that our methods have allowed people to grasp. So I'm going to show everybody some slides just to amplify what I've said. And then maybe I'll take some questions or I can give you a couple of practices that we use. But let me just show you a few slides so you can make it a little more academic sense of what forgiveness is and is not and all that other stuff. So this first slide that I have up is, what is forgiveness?
Mm.
And it shows because almost no one knows what forgiveness actually is, which is why almost no one does it. What we have learned is that probably 25% of what we do when we talk to people is teach them what forgiveness is and isn't.
Mm.
So on this slide, you all see forgiveness is about your healing. That means it's for you, not the person or group that hurt you. You don't forgive because they deserve it. You forgive because you deserve it.
Mm.
And that is huge. They may be crappy people, but what you don't want is to stay miserable because crappy people acted crappy to you. This is such a central tenet of positive mental health. You don't want to stay unhappy, angry, bitter, or scared simply because people acted badly. You or me, we owe it to ourselves, and in particular, the people around us, to recover and become forward looking again so that we don't hurt the people around us. So let me digress for a minute and tell a story, the story, I'll make it very short, of how I became a forgiveness teacher. My best friend in the world, literally my best friend in the world, abandoned me. Just, we were in contact like, you know, 5 days a week. I don't even know what the right number is. I hope you know what I'm saying. Um, and all of a sudden, I'm toast. You know that, like, nobody is no, he's ghosted me. That word did not exist when this happened, but he ghosted me. That's how old I am. Um, but not from a lot to none. And the thing that did it was he had a new girlfriend. They came to our house for dinner, and whatever reason, she didn't feel good or trust us or me. And when they left, I didn't hear from him again.
Mm.
I did not hear from him again. They got married. I didn't hear from him again. I went, it wrecked me for a couple of years. And I was a walking mess. And nothing changed in my world until my wife came to me and said, Fred, you can do better. Like, when I married you, I expected a stronger person. And, it's not that great coming home to you. I mean, she wasn't threatening me. She was just telling the truth. And what I saw at that moment, well, maybe it was a legitimate grievance to me, but it was hurting her. And that literally changed my life. That I finally saw the impact of my grievance on the people around me. And now, as I've done this work all over the world, literally all over the world, I see how much our grievances hurt, not the other side, but our side.
Mm.
And so forgiveness is about us and me and the people close to me. So I forgave my friend. I reached back out to him, and we've been friends ever since. I mean, it, it, at this point in my life, it's not even a speed bump. It's like complete forgiveness because I forgave. And it's over. It's done. I can talk about it like this because it has no charge. It's just, I learned. But it was for me and my family, and it worked. So forgiveness is taking back your power. And then forgiveness is you're responsible, me, for how you feel, not the person or group that hurt you. So what changed things for me was when I realized that I'm giving this past bad thing like total power for how I feel. What an awful way to go through life.
Mm.
When I gave that up, I realized that I could have given that up 2 years ago. So this is one of the slides The next slide continues this. Forgiveness is not about the person. Forgiveness is a choice. But our research and others have shown, and this is crucial, forgiveness can and will improve your mental and physical health. Forgiveness reduces depression, reduces anger, decreases stress, leads to more hope, reduces the symptoms of stress, and has some impact on your cardiovascular system. And it makes sense. Like when I walked around being pissed off at him and feeling sorry for myself for 2 years, that's not good for my body. You know, it's like duh. You don't need a Stanford PhD to tell you that. Like if you walk around angry all day or feeling sorry for yourself, you're not going to be in optimal health. Anyway, the other piece of this that's crucial is, what is forgiveness not?
Mm.
Forgiveness doesn't mean that it's okay to do bad things. Like you're not giving somebody approval. I hope you're not giving somebody approval to do bad things. What you're doing is saying, bad things happen. There's nothing I can do to make this world only have good things in it. So instead of fighting the rest of my life what happened, I'm going to grieve it, process it, and grow from it. But it's not like I'm going to say, my friend did the right thing, but I now understand more about it. So I have more compassion. And I understand that painful things happen, and I had to learn how to deal with them.
Mm.
So it's not like I'm making everything okay. And when we talk to people, um, you know, it's it's not like you have to get over the fact that somebody really did a terrible thing. It's that you no longer blame that for your current life. Forgiveness doesn't mean you forget. So that ridiculous idea that forgive and forget, no, it's forgive and remember differently. That right there is the crucial aspect of this whole thing. Forgiveness does not mean that you forget. It means that you remember differently. And since that is entirely, I don't know what the word is, entirely up to you, that's the power of forgiveness. One more slide on that. Forgiveness doesn't mean you minimize or make believe you weren't hurt. It means you've worked it through. Forgiveness doesn't mean you have to reconcile with the offender. Like somebody can hurt you badly enough where you absolutely know you're done with them. Like you could have lived with an alcoholic and, after 10 times of them lying to you, you say, enough, I'm done. You go your way, I go my way. But you can still forgive them in your heart, but just not spend any more time with them. I remember when this became so obvious to me, so clear, was A young woman came to one of my classes and really poignantly said she had this awful father. And she was like 25 and she had this awful father. And she wanted to forgive him, but her concern was if she forgave him, did that mean she had to go home for Thanksgiving? I mean, she was really anguished about this. It was not trivial for her. And I said to her, no, you forgive to clear your head and mine, but then with a clear head, you recognize he's not safe. So, of course, you don't go home over Thanksgiving.
Mm.
Maybe the most you do with your dad is you talk to him on the phone. Maybe. But forgiveness doesn't mean that you don't value yourself or know you need to protect yourself. But you don't have bitterness in your heart anymore. And you don't need to be afraid as much, but you still have a responsibility to keep yourself safe and protect yourself. So this is a crucial distinction. The last one is forgiveness does not mean you give up having feelings. In fact, when you learn to grieve a little bit, um, you get better at expressing your feelings. You because they'll pass. And sometimes one of the antidotes to being, let's say, mistreated is to get better at expressing your feelings that things aren't okay before they escalate. The other piece is sometimes the people who hurt you, you don't even know who they are. So, a hit and run driver, a economic catastrophe, somebody steals all the stock from your company, it goes bankrupt. I mean, or some group hurts another group. You don't know who even it is. So we came to understand really clearly that forgiveness is an inside thing, that it's about how we see the world and how we hold our wounds, not necessarily letting somebody off the hook. I'm going to talk about one more thing and then I'll stop and see if you have any questions for me. The other piece that's crucial is that the only way to really move ahead is to also recognize not just have things hurt you, but you live a life with a lot of blessings in them. So the foundation under forgiveness is gratitude. So the most useful beginning for anyone who wants to get a happier life is to recognize that not only can things be painful and difficult, but they can also be astonishingly beautiful. And so, as part of our work, from the beginning, we define for people what forgiveness is, what it is not. We talk about the research, but even from the very beginning, we teach them to look for the good in their life to balance out the not so good. And the simplest example of that is, and since we did our teaching mostly, when we started at Stanford, um, we would ask people, so, tell us how somebody was bad to you. And then we'd ask, well, who was nice to you today? Who was kind to you? Talk about that too. So from the very beginning, it was you want to see your life clearly. You want to see the good and the bad, not just the bad. And when you see things more clearly, you're able to have a better perspective because you then see things more accurately. So there's 120 people here. Let me ask each of you to stop for a moment, and I'm going to do a very simple meditation around gratitude. Just to give, because I've talked for 45 minutes, let me give everybody just a simple moment's practice in what this is all about. And it's so simple. So, those of you listening, please just be willing to do a guided imagery for 2 minutes, which means put your phone somewhere else so they don't distract you. Put your phone somewhere else, please. And then close your eyes for a moment or two. Allow your eyes to close. And just bring your attention inward. Just bring your attention inward. That means just, instead of thinking about the world, just bring your attention inside of you. Bring your attention inside of you. And just allow yourself to relax. And it's really an allowing. And as you do that, you will find that your breathing will slow down a bit and everything will get gentler, just gentler. You'll breathe a little more gently. Your muscles may feel a little more quiet. And it's into that relaxed space that you just want to ask yourself, think, who's someone I love? Who's someone that I love? And you want to picture them. You just want to picture someone you love. And you want to hold that picture. And if you can, you want to feel the affection you have. Just see if you can feel it. Feel it. Feel the love, feel the affection. And then just say thank you. Thank you to love. Thank you to this person. Just inside of you, say thank you. And then let that go, let the feeling go, let the thinking go, let the thank you go, and just take a breath and then gently open your eyes. So as to wrap up what I said, this is how the idea of positive psychology can interact with, ages old stuff on forgiveness by the simple reminder for all of us to try to see our life in balance. That our nervous system will demand that we see what's wrong, but we have choice to also see what's right. And the more we keep those in balance, the more honest kind of stories we tell about our life. Our stories then are closer to true, that they describe usually a rich, multi everything life with good treatment, bad treatment, pain, happiness. Some people were nicer to us than we were to them. Other times, we were nicer than they were. But it creates a more truthful life, which helps us absorb some of the unkindness. Anyway, I assume that's a reasonably good overview and introduction to a secular forgiveness methodology based on positive psych with an emphasis on kind of mindfulness, guided imagery, narrative, gratitude, and a little bit from our point of view of kind of cognitive behavioral changing your self-talk. And we have shown that this secular method can be used in many, many, many places in different parts of the world. So if anybody has a question for me,
I, I think,
ask.
Doctor, there are a couple of questions for you. I am going to read them for you just to make your life easier. But thank you so much. It has been really enlightening. And I like how you define forgiveness is not about forgetting, it's about redefining your memory and
Oh
how
my God.
this is so resonating with me, and I'm sure with the audience as well. A comment from one of the audience, so powerful about overcoming victim mentality. Thank you. Thank you, Sundus. And a question from Dr. Maria. Thank you, Dr. Fred, for the wonderful and enriching experience. My question is, how unconscious guilt could affect our capacity to forgive?
I'm not 100% sure that I believe that there's just unconscious guilt.
Hmm.
I think there is unconscious guilt, but I think it also shows itself consciously. I mean, the conscious expression of it is not the totality of it,
Okay.
but it's a part of it. So the question is more, how are you acting, thinking, and feeling in your current life?
Hmm.
And you can leave out some of you're looking for explanations. So if you find yourself, let's say this unconscious guilt makes you harsh on yourself, like I'm a bad person, or I deserve it, or I've done bad things. It's more important to practice self-forgiveness when it comes up than it is to worry about the unconscious or any of the past causative things.
Okay.
And to learn as your life goes forward to bring self-forgiveness to how you handle current experience.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Moving on to question from Dr. Mansour Habib. Can we consider being kind as a return to those who hurt us as a higher grade of our path toward healing?
Sometimes
Hmm.
you want to be careful
Okay.
because yes, you if it's a freely given choice to offer kindness, it's wonderful. If it's out of fear or insecurity or just wanting to mollify somebody, you want to be careful with it.
Okay.
Better to just clear your heart and allow yourself to live in that clear heart and get a little guidance from that clear heart. Sometimes that clear heart will say, there's absolutely no reason to treat them with anything but goodwill, and then you go do it.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
sometimes we jump ahead of where we actually are to try to reduce bad feelings. I'm cautious about that.
Okay. So being aware of the forgiveness procedure, meaning the grieveness, I mean, all the negative emotion experiencing, and you're allowing those negative emotions to come to you, process them, take your time until you heal.
That's it. And then you will be left with a more open heart that sometimes, like with my friend, there's nothing holding me back, nothing. And with other people, like I've practiced forgiveness, and sometimes because you've held a grudge, you want to reach out to them with even more kindness because you were, you know what I'm saying. But
Mm,
you don't want to just put that out there as advice for everyone all the time.
okay. We have a comment from Dr. Rueda. Lovely to see you today. She expressed how forgiveness meant to her. Uh, it means, I mean, she wrote a really long comment just to sum up. She said, it means learning to live with what happened while finding peace. To me, forgiveness is a form of healing, and it's like having a scar that no longer hurts.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another question.
I mean, there's there's a lot of, I mean, what am I going to say? Whenever anybody has forgiven, really, it transforms them a little,
Hmm.
and they have something to offer us that's new.
Mm, that's true. Um, um, uh, Question: what is the rule of spirituality and forgiveness?
There are spiritual, but entry points to forgiveness, and there are secular entry points to forgiveness. Some people open to forgiveness because of their religion, their background, maybe their faith in God. Other people can open to forgiveness because they don't want heart attacks,
Mm,
or they want to improve relationships with themselves or the world. One is not better than the other. The the point being that we are taking an unresolved insult and injury and
Mm-hmm.
we're smoothing it.
Okay.
And that can be, like, from a higher order spiritual perspective, a good thing, or it can be a good thing simply because that smoothing produces less disturbance in the endocrine system.
Mm,
It's um, people can do nice for a lot of reasons.
true, true. Another question about culture differences and forgiveness. Would you like to speak a bit about that?
I mean, culture, forms part of everything we do.
Mm.
That we're informed, created, like developed by our culture. Some cultures make forgiveness really hard. You know,
Mm,
they're very retribution based. They see it as a sign of weakness. Many cultures teach people revenge. If somebody slights you or disrespects you, everything we do is culturally impacted. And like, there's even multiple cultures. So, you're from the Middle East. I'm sitting here in California. We have very different cultures. We come from different families. There's many different influences. There are
mhm.
also basic similarities between cultures. So I'm reading the thing there that says forgiveness over retaliation. Um, what's written there is not that different than other cultures that talk about forgiveness. So you want to understand that culture has an influence, and there are some aspects of being a human being that are transcultural, that they exist in all.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. I truly appreciate Ruwaida's comment and Professor Munir comment as well. Just to end up this webinar, Professor Fred, you mentioned that forgiveness can be learned.
Oh, yeah.
If I would ask you to give the audience practical way of forgiving, what those steps will be?
I mean, there's a couple.
Okay.
One is, don't try learning forgiveness towards the worst thing that ever happened to you.
Mm,
That's like guaranteed failure.
okay.
So if you want to start practicing forgiveness, start with something smaller and start with someone you like.
Okay.
So if you have a good friend or a family member who has done something wrong, use that as your practice for forgiveness because you like them, you're not going anywhere. And then it's a good target because it'll make your life better as well as theirs. So that's one. Two, when you're upset with them, use it as information first. So, what am I actually upset about? What do I need to say to them? What hurt me? You have to learn first. And then, after you've learned it, you have to calm the upset down. So, we suggest everybody do some kind of deep breathing or imagery so that they actually shut down physiologically their upset.
Mm,
Then,
okay.
when they're in a kinder, quieter space, they can then remind themselves basically some kind of cognitive thing. Everybody makes mistakes, everybody has problems, or, this is something for me to learn, some placeholder of why they need to go through some mental things. And then they can say to themselves, I forgive you, just from
Mm,
their heart. I forgive you from your heart. that's probably the simplest process for somebody that you like and that you're simply letting go of. That becomes more challenging as it gets further away from liking, but that's the basic outline.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Fred, for your time. I just want to remind the audience to fill in the link and to evaluate our webinar. And don't forget to write down your names. You'll get a certificate for attending today's webinar. Dr. Fred, it has been a pleasure seeing you again. I actually cannot wait to see you, meet you in person. I might attend your class once my son turns a year old, so I can travel.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's funny because like I'm part of Stanford's executive program. And so people come from all over the world to study business school at Stanford. And I meet these most interesting people from everywhere. And some of the more interesting have been from the Middle East. Some of the more interesting folks. I think it's Saudi Arabia that
Oh,
sends, I don't know. But I've enjoyed the little tiny bit of cultural exchange that I've had with people from that part of the world, having never been there. So I'm just saying thank you for inviting me. I just loved the fact that I was talking to folks from literally halfway around the world. That is just so cool to me.
well, your work has been really well recognized here, and we're so honored to have you. Really.
Where did these folks who attended come from? Like, how did they hear about this?
Let me ask them to write down where they're from in the chat box. Can you write down where you guys are? Most of
Well,
them live in the,
it's
oh, Portuguese. Okay. UAE. UAE.
isn't
At the
that
moment.
cool?
Oh,
So that's United Arab Emirates.
that's correct.
Is
Oh,
that
UK. We have UK.
is that the country you live in, United Arab
Yes.
Emirates?
Yes. Oh, we have from Mexico and from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, very cool.
Canada.
If you want me to do this again sometime, just let me know.
We'll definitely do that.
Thank you. It was nice to see you again.
Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Of course.
Thank
Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fred and Ms. Snow, for this amazing webinar and very active. Thank you so much for your time. And I would
I'm
like to,
delighted. I'm delighted this works out. You have no idea how cool this is for me.
Oh,
Growing up when I did
yeah,
that, I can see people from completely different cultures,
yeah.
different worlds,
mhm.
and give a talk without having to leave my house. That is a good,
The
that
power of
is a
technology.
good,
Yeah,
I
that
know.
is a good deal.
yeah.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Dr. Frederick. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. And we
Thank
would like to thank everybody who has been involved in making this webinar happening, the management of the College of the UAE. Special thanks to Ms. Nov Al-Junabi for her excellent moderations. And we'd like to remind everybody that our upcoming webinar, which is the last of this year 2024, will be on the 10th of December 2024. And it will be presented by our own Prof. Sayed Shah, full professor at the Institute of Public Health. Mark your calendar and looking forward to meet everybody again in December. Thank you so much and have a safe evening and good night. Thank you, Disney.
مع السلامة.
مع السلامة. مع السلامة.